Hi, I'm Vrinda. Have you ever been to a press conference? I myself had never attended one, despite being in this profession of journalism for 5 years now. Many people enter this field but often don't get the chance to see what a press conference actually looks like. When I woke up on the morning of the 17th of April, I had no idea that in just about half an hour, I would be standing a few feet away from Rahul Gandhi and Akhilesh Yadav in a hall full of journalists at a hotel right at the center of immense political action. This is about my first experience of attending a political press conference. I had been working late the night before, and upon waking, I saw a message from Ravish informing me that Rahul Gandhi's press conference was going to take place in Ghaziabad. We thought we were already too late, and so there was no point in going all the way. However, just a few minutes later, he sent me another message telling me to get ready and that we were going. I thought I had some time to get ready, but in this profession you have to be ready all the time and also have your phone charged all the time. And so in less than 10 minutes of telling me to get ready, Ravish was downstairs waiting in the car, and I rushed as much as I could and joined him. He in fact almost left me but was kind enough to come back and take me along. Upon reaching the venue, we realized we were in fact late. But we thought we would still give it a shot. We started walking towards the gate, and I was just beginning to take in my surroundings when Ravish told me to get ready with my phone camera. To my utter horror, I realized that my phone was down to a meager 40%. Remember, your phone should always be 100% if you're a journalist. I turned it on to extreme battery saver mode and started shooting Ravish as he began walking towards the crowd. We fought past a very excited crowd and reached the security check, where we were told that there was absolutely no chance of an entry. We waited for a while, tried making some calls, but no luck. We decided to go back and were nearly there at the exit when one of the media managers inside called us back. The same man that you see on the screen now. He took us along, and suddenly we were inside. The idea that struck me first was that behind the frame that we see of the press conference on our channels and on our screens is a huge political machinery which is constantly on the go. We went through a hallway, then down the stairs and into a large hall where chairs lay about lazily, but the people were all charged up. The entire focus and energy of the room was directed towards the far corner, which was just not visible to me from where I was. As we entered the room, I heard Rahul Gandhi speaking on the mic. It was obvious that one had to find one's own way in this crowd. I found myself going towards a corner where there was some space, and by the time I looked around to see where Ravish was, I found him gone and saw him standing far away upon a chair recording the press conference on his phone. I realized this was probably the best strategy, and so myself got upon a chair and started recording videos. For a while in the beginning, I couldn't really follow the content of the press conference because I was truly overwhelmed by the sheer presence of so many journalists in that hall. I had never realized, despite being in the media for so long now, that an event which just consists of a few people speaking into a microphone and addressing a few 10-15 questions could possibly include such a huge inventory of journalistic manpower and equipment. There was an army of cameras in that room, and there were as many people sitting in front of those cameras, attentive, noting down everything, listening to what was being said. Given the lack of meaningful coverage that the opposition gets in mainstream media, it was almost wondrous to see that such interactions are still happening between the press and the politicians. Clearly and unfortunately, none of this gets filtered down into our newspapers and on our media channels. Obviously, it is done purposefully. There were probably more cell phones in the room than there were the high-end cameras. But seeing those cameras in action filled me with a sense of the futility that has been forced upon them. These cameras and these mics have been forced to go silent, even though they still have that power to ask questions. That hall did not have a lack of questions. There were all kinds of questions there. Misleading questions, questions meant to attack, distract, detract. There were also well-meaning questions, questions that actually challenged those who were sitting there. At times, there were questions to which the two politicians did not seem to have the most convincing answer as well. but this was a room where all kinds of questions were still allowed to be asked. Contrast this with what this looks like, an empty room with no questions and so naturally no information. I realized that I was a little too far away when I was at this angle, so I went to the opposite side of the room and stood upon a chair and started recording again. Of course, I was again reminded of my short height, but one pushes along. I stood on that chair for nearly 30 minutes, shooting almost non-stop, recording the energy of the room and seeing what journalists around me were doing. Apart from the journalists, there were also the politicians. They looked fierce, haggard, tired, and at times ready to pick a fight, but were surprisingly kind and encouraging as well. They offered me a spot to stand and do my job, which was more than I could ask for that day. Every now and then, I saw Ravish across the room, shooting the hall from various angles. I was filled with a sense of community with all these people, suddenly, unexpectedly. I work in a very, very small team where one almost forgets that there is an entire media industry where thousands of people are still working and which supports thousands of homes. It is an industry which unfortunately has created a drought of information for you but has no dearth of resources itself. But looking at these journalists, I also realized that there were these people who were still on the ground, following the elections in this heat, taking notes, waiting for their turn to ask the questions because that chance is gone in a split second. The whole time I was waiting for one particular moment. Over the last few years working as a journalist, I have watched countless press conferences. I have analyzed them, made notes out of them, I have edited them, cut out bites and moments of action. But there is always that one moment in a press conference which you hear but you never see. This is the moment when the questions are finally supposed to get over, and this is when there's a burst of energy behind the camera. You can always hear the journalists fighting to push through with their questions, but there's just no time left. Very rarely in a press conference do you actually see the press at this point. I wanted to capture this moment, and when it happened, I was ready. There was a sudden chaos, a blast of questions and noise from this group of people who were till then very attentively listening to what was going on. I saw all these hands going up in the air, armed with questions, but the music was on, the leaders were up. And just like that, the press conference was over. I got down my chair and saw that there were multiple missed calls from Ravish, who had been looking for me. Clearly, I had disappeared in that sea of people. I got down my chair, met him, and then left the hall as hastily as I had entered it. A swarm of people gathered around him, as is often the case. We crossed all of them, went up a flight of steps, got back into the hall from where we had entered. All this while, there was a huge crowd of people waiting to speak to him and get selfies. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, some altercation took place near the main gate. Somebody got angry with somebody else, and honestly, I don't know why. But I was constantly amused by the idea that politics on the ground plays out so differently from the perfectly edited videos that you see on your TV and your YouTube screens. It's a messy, messy affair. There is competition, anger, fatigue, frustration, joy, excitement. Everything is rolled into this huge exercise called elections, where the ultimate legitimacy is derived from you, the voter. But an open, unmediated, democratic interaction with the press is one of the cornerstones of an open democracy. It's an event in the life cycle of a politician where they are often built, broken, and put back together. The Prime Minister has refused to participate in any press conference in the last 10 years. So, never take a press conference lightly. There is always far more there than meets the eye. The answers given in a press conference are important, yes, but the questions are as important. Think about what those questions bring to you. Think about what the questions are actually asking. Think about the answers that are expected from these questions, and think hard about whether there is any space left for questions around you at all. Till next time, this is Vox Vrinda.